My adolescence was all about being like the lowly, hideous goblin that the handsome boy dares to speak to.
What major change in her life made Jennette McCurdy consider quitting acting? What were her shocking true feelings regarding her role as Sam Puckett? And what do Jennette's co-stars have to say about her not joining the iCarly reboot? Hi, I'm Janet. Let's get into it. Quitting acting. Jennette McCurdy was probably best known for her role as Sam Puckett in the hit Nickelodeon show iCarly. But as with many child stars before her, Jennette unfortunately fell victim to the pressures of Hollywood. And in a recent interview with Anna Faris on her podcast, Empty Inside, Jennette opened up about deciding to quit acting once and for all. To those who've been following Jennette for a while now, this shouldn't come as a surprise. In an essay she wrote for HuffPost in 2019, Jennette opened up about the fact that she didn't feel like her iCarly character contributed to anything that made her a positive example for kids. As we all know, Sam is often prone to wild and reckless behavior, not to mention the abundance of times she resorted to violence in scenes. To Jennette, this is anything but role model behavior, and she still finds it deeply upsetting today. In the essay, she went on to say that by the time she was 21, she had just signed a deal for the spin-off series Sam and Cat, and she also became acutely aware that kids across the earth idolized her. She felt like she was supposed to find it cool, but it was actually really frightening. My great contribution to society was walking into an overlit Nickelodeon set, shouting lines about fried chicken, she said. And that's what kids were looking up to? She pointed out that it was the shallowness of her success that made her resent it, and this unfortunately only served as fuel for another problem she struggled with: her disordered eating. More on that in a second. When going into deeper detail about her life as a child actress, Jennette recalled a memory from when she was 10 years old. Her mother was yelling at her agent because the agent failed to land Jennette a very sought-after audition. Since the agent was on the speakerphone, Jennette heard the agent's explanation. Apparently, Jennette was homely and not pretty enough. Having been told things like this her entire life, Jennette actually found acting quite difficult. She would frequently suffer from panic attacks, and most of the time had to force herself onto set. As the years passed, she started to learn to control her nerves. But just as she did, her mother passed away. Along with her death, all of her mother's ideas for Jennette's life died with her. She suddenly felt alone and on her own, and had to reconsider what she wanted for the future. This was when the idea of quitting popped into her mind. Her reason? She simply didn't want to do it anymore.
I quit a few years ago because I initially didn't want to do it. My mom put me in it when I was 6, and by sort of age, I guess 10 or 11, I was the main financial support for my family.
According to her, it was never ambition driving her, but rather her love for her family. When asked about joining the iCarly revival, Jennette made it clear that she wasn't. The truth is, she simply isn't excited about the project. If the director was someone whose work she really admired, then she might have reconsidered. Otherwise, she said, her past auditions as a kid and her struggles with Nickelodeon would come before her eyes. And having recently only found contentment with herself, she's not ready to step back into that environment. As for other roles, Jennette isn't entirely shutting the door to acting. If she could work with a director she admires, she would definitely give it a go. Before we go on, how about you take a moment to subscribe? The Catcher brings you regular video uploads on all your favorite shows. From real-life dramas to behind-the-scenes secrets, we've got it all. Struggles with Nickelodeon. While Jennette was often seen on screen laughing and fooling around as the reckless Sam Puckett, her behind-the-scenes reality wasn't always as sunny. In 2014, Jennette came onto the media's radar when provocative photos of herself were leaked online. While this wasn't enough to make her feel bad, Jennette opened up about Nickelodeon not supporting her through the incident and actually shaming her for it. Jennette chose not to attend that year's Kids' Choice Awards, explaining in a Twitter post that she was put in an uncomfortable, compromising, unfair situation and that she had to look out for herself. She said that she didn't go because she was sticking up for what she thought was right. At the time, many fans thought Jennette was referring to the photo leak, but she later clarified that the situation, in fact, had nothing to do with the photos, but how the network treated her in general. On top of this, Jennette in recent years started opening up about another struggle she had to endure. At only 11 years old, Jennette developed an eating disorder, which she said was only encouraged by her mother.
She had introduced me to anorexia because she thought it would help me play younger roles for acting.
As messed up as it sounds, Jennette went on to admit that her mother was in fact right, and staying smaller did help her land more roles. Since not eating seemed to be working for her, this became Jennette's new normal. She said that as a child actress working in Hollywood, she learned that size was a type of competition at red carpets and other events.
just this you can just feel the pressure of it. You can feel everybody kind of body monitoring, food monitoring everybody else in the room. It's just such a part of the business.
Over the years, Jennette thought about sharing her story, but being so young and insecure, she was afraid of people judging her. She hated the idea of being seen as vulnerable and didn't want anyone to think she was crying out for help. Despite it all having started with her mother, though, the actress said she doesn't hold it against her at all. She had always seen her mother struggle with her own body, and as a coping mechanism, she started comparing Jennette's body to the actresses around her. When Jennette booked the role for iCarly at the age of 14, she and her mother both became even more obsessed with the way she looked. "I became more fixated on food and my body," she said. "I monitored every bite I took. I exercised obsessively. I measured my thighs with a measuring tape every night before bed." Unfortunately, because Jennette was already so thin when she booked the role of Sam, she was pressured to stay that way by the people on set. According to Jennette, the wardrobe stylists and producers never failed to tell her how great she looked, and as she became even thinner, the praises only amplified. No one asked any questions, and no one expressed any concern. Thinking back, Jennette said that her destructive behavior was definitely obvious to everyone around her, but they were all monetizing the situation. It wasn't until her sister-in-law confronted her after she returned from the bathroom after Thanksgiving dinner that the struggle came to light. Recalling that moment, Jennette said she was actually relieved. Finally, someone saw what was happening to her and wanted to help.
Pushing for recovery, I was just confronted with all those feelings that I'd been bottling up and suppressing and shoving down for so long, and that was so difficult. I'd been burying them for 13 years.
Today, Jennette still hears that old eating disorder voice every now and again, but luckily, she's able to muffle it with tools she's gathered along the way. She's happy to be in the place she's at and encourages everyone in the same position to seek help and heal. That's really great to hear, isn't it? Especially since we all know that Sam Puckett loves to eat. A world in which Sam doesn't eat isn't a world we'd want to live in. Ashamed of past roles. Despite her struggles with Nickelodeon, Jennette seems to have an even deeper reason for putting acting aside, and especially passing on reprising her role as Sam. When discussing her career with Anna Faris in the same podcast episode, the two reflected on the inauthenticity of talk shows, getting rejected, and their earliest acting gigs. We all know Anna Faris recently said goodbye to her starring role of Christy Plunkett on CBS's Mom. And since then, the actress admitted that she was starting to feel the acting itch again. She asked Jennette if she ever felt that way about one of her own characters, and her answer was rather surprising. "I resent my career in a lot of ways," she said. "I feel so unfulfilled by the roles that I played, and I felt like it was the most just cheesy, embarrassing. I imagine there's a very different experience to be had with acting if you're proud of your roles." Jennette went on to say that she knows her answer is probably super unlikable, but that she wasn't about to lie to her fans.
I get that this answer is like super unlikable, and then it's like, oh, boo-hoo, you were famous when you were a kid, like, oh, cry me a river. But it is true to me, so it's the most I can offer.
What do you think? Should Jennette really be ashamed of bringing Sam to our screens? Her iCarly co-stars.
I can't think of any group of people that I'd rather get to see every day, and even though I'll see them all the time, knowing that I won't see everybody every day anymore is awful.
Of course, with Jennette declining in any participation in the iCarly reboot, her co-stars are bound to be asked for comments. Before Jennette openly spoke about her decision, fans started to wonder whether her relationship with her co-stars might have had anything to do with it. Luckily for us, the iCarly gang has nothing against each other, and despite being disappointed in Jennette's absence, they seem to be supporting her. In a recent episode of his Radioactive Dads podcast, Nathan Kress personally addressed Jennette's decision not to take part in the reboot. "I think it's just a personal decision and where she's at and what she wants to do. I think her focus has generally been on content creation, doing like her podcast that's really doing well, and writing, directing, and producing." He went on to say, or rather speculate, that because Jennette already did the Sam and Cat spin-off series, she might also feel like her character is complete. Nathan also admitted that even though he had personally talked to Jennette about it, he still doesn't know her full reason for declining. Right now, he's decided to take it as a personal decision and not a decision focused on her co-stars. He went on to emphasize that there were no hard feelings between them and that the iCarly cast are all on good terms. He said, "There's not some kind of grand conspiracy. There's nothing for people to find on the internet, and there are no clues in tweets. It's not anything like that." Even though we're super bummed about Jennette, at least we know Sam, Carly, and Freddie are still there to support each other. What do you think about Jennette's decision to quit acting? Could she possibly have a change of heart in the future?
Thanks for watching this. Keep watching Fan the Love videos for more fun things.
Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.